everyone. Welcome back to the Screenwriting Life. I'm Meg LeFauve, and today we're going to talk to writer-producer Simran Baidwan. Simran is an Emmy Award winner born to East Indian immigrants in the San Francisco Bay Area. She holds a law degree from USD School of Law, where she was an editor on the prestigious San Diego Law Review. She left a successful career as a criminal prosecutor to tackle the mean streets of Hollywood. She has written for such shows as Netflix's Manifest and ABC's The Good Doctor. She also served as showrunner on Amazon's half-hour comedy Clean Slate, starring Laverne Cox and George Wallace, and produced by the late TV legend Norman Lear. Simran has developed numerous projects for Warner Brothers, 20th Television, and Roddenberry Entertainment, and in addition, she serves as the MPTF Next Gen Board of Directors. She serves on. In addition, Simran serves on the MPTF Next Gen Board of Directors and is a mentor at The Salon, an incubator for emerging South Asian talent, and has been a speaker at Dan Lynn's Ride Back Rise. Currently, she is an executive producer and writer of one of the best shows on television, The Pitt. When The Pitt won the Emmy for Outstanding Drama Series in 2025, Simran became the first South Asian woman to win the award. Simran, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Meg.
I'm so lucky I have a podcast because I can bring on only the shows and people that I am the biggest obsessed fan with and get to talk to you. And I love your show so much.
Oh, thank you.
Um, I will admit that the first pilot, I was like, I'm not sure I can do this. I'm not sure because I have a little anxiety, kind of wrote a whole movie about it. So I have a little anxiety, but I'm so in. I love every minute of it. I'm sad when it ends. So I'm so excited to talk to you. Um, but before we jump into the show and all things Simran, we're going to first talk about adventures in screenwriting, which
Okay.
is how was your week? Um, I will start real quick because mine is super easy and weird and fun, which is I have a project that I wrote as a TV pilot 12 years ago. It's been set up 3 times, never got the green
Oh,
light. It got me Captain Marvel as my writing sample. It's like it has garnered so much for me in
yeah.
terms of other work, and my agent calls it the project that will not die because 12 years later, I just got a pitch to turn it into a feature, and I
Oh
was
my
like, "Okay."
Congratulations. That's
I
amazing.
mean,
That's amazing.
I still have to do it and submit it and who knows, and I have a new writing partner and, that'll be a whole new adventure of how you
Sure.
do this, but it's one of the I don't know if you've ever had that kind of project where it's your heart passion project and every year or so it kind of comes back alive and you're like, "Wow, it's still relevant. It's
I love
still."
it. Oh,
I don't know if you ever had that
well,
experience.
first, yes, mad props and congratulations. I feel right now we have to celebrate every win in this industry as we're feeling a lot of contraction. And, we all have friends and family and other people that who are just, it's been really rough. It's been really, a difficult road since the strike. So again, kudos. Let's take all these
Let's
wins
take
and
every
celebrate
win.
everything. Yes.
So, how was your week?
My week was great. It's really interesting because we're in this prep mode for season 3 right now. So
Woo!
we've been in the writers' room since March 2nd. And so we've kind of been in our own little bubble, in so to speak. But what's been nice is having all of our department heads back and having our producers back. And, we just had our first table read for
Woo!
season 3 premiere. So that was really exciting. It was kind of like, the first day of school. Everybody's excited to see each other and get back into the swing of things.
So, let me ask you, Simran, when you're going in for season 3, is there any nerves? Is there any vulnerability? Do you feel like the bar is so high now, or is it only, kind of exciting?
I think it's a combination, honestly. Yes, it's extremely exciting. It's really wonderful. We are so appreciative of audiences and, critical acceptance and acclaim. That's been really wonderful. But yeah, there's an expectation that not only audiences have and our studio and network partners have, but we have for ourselves, about how do we, not just meet where we are, but like, try to, move the story along, like, push ourselves to think a little bit further outside the box already than what we've done before. What are the, maybe the expectations, and then how do we subvert some of those, or how do we bring surprises to that? So it's a wonderful task. It's a great creative exercise, and we have a really incredible, group of writers led by Scott Gemmell, who is our fearless leader and creator, who really allows this safe space for us to pitch anything and everything that may pop into our minds.
That safe space is so important, especially for that vulnerability, right? That you can pitch a bad idea, so to
Truly,
speak.
truly.
That is so, so important that it doesn't become competitive, right? That it becomes everybody say what you want to say. Is that the feeling in the room? Is that kind of
100%. No, you hit the nail on the head. It really is one of these things because oftentimes we're breaking out the season and character arcs and story arcs, and no, episodes have been assigned to writers yet. So we're really just looking at it holistically. We're looking at it from a group lens, or what's the best stories we want to tell, what are the most incredible arcs, what are the fun things we want to do, and then later on we go through and assign who's going to write what episode, and people can put their special sauce on it and do different things. But it really is something that all of us takes such great pride in, that regardless of whose name is actually on the byline, so to speak, we really care about each and every episode because it belongs to all of us, and all of us really care deeply about the end product.
and how do you begin the break? Are you breaking the season really looking at the doctor's arcs, character arcs first? Are you kind of I'm assuming you have consultants, MDs or I not just for the jargon, just for the crazy stories.
Yes,
Um
yes.
that's a lot. It's a lot to say, okay, where do we start? When you start a new season, are you I would guess arcs, but I don't know
Yes.
actually. How
No,
are
you're
you
absolutely right. For us, characters first, and it's always the series is really told through the lens of, the healthcare workers, their points of view. How are the people coming in through those doors really impacting their lives professionally and personally? So, you want to start with their perspectives. What are their experiences at home? What's been going on in the past, between season 1 and 2? What happened in the past 10 months? How do you bring, that baggage or not into your workspace, because inevitably it gets interwoven. And so we really want to think about that, and we break out the arcs and the paths and kind of the different things that we want to see for everybody. And we have to remind ourselves that the same types of things that can happen on other shows, where each episode can have days or weeks or months in between, doesn't apply to us. These things happen over one shift. Each episode is 1 hour in one day. So just really thinking about that, like, what the impact may not be the same, or you may not
Mm.
have you know enough like reflective time to be like, oh, I kind of messed that up, or do I have enough time to even issue an apology where I may need to. So those kinds of things we think about really, really deeply. And yes, as far as the medical cases, they're obviously very vital, very important. We're trying to tell things as accurately as possible. We have Dr. Joe Sachs, who's been with us since season 1. Dr. Mel Herbert joined us for season 2, and now Josh Troke, another ER doctor, has joined us. So now we have 3 experts, who have all this lived experience of working in emergency departments, in addition to a vast array of experts that we seek out, through contacts, through Hollywood Health and Society, through, we have actual real life emergency department doctors and nurses who consult on our show, who are there from prep to shooting, day in and day out. They are on set with us. So if any minor thing comes up, or if they have an idea about stuff, we're all in this collaborative, little room together. So it's really
in
exciting.
your creative bubble. So
Yeah.
in terms of the reoccurring cases, when you're beginning to break the show for the season, some are gonna go because it's one day, so
Yep.
they're gonna go through different episodes. Not all, but a good amount. Are you picking those based on the character, who's going to dealing with that case? Or do you pick them based on, I don't know, just how cool they are or how strange or how challenging, or is it kind of a combo? How do you find those recurring cases? We have pro writers who are listening who have been in many rooms, but we also have emerging writers who might be writing their own pilot, and it may not be a hospital, it may be a lawyer, but they
Yeah.
also are going to find cases, right? So
Absolutely.
it's just interesting to kind of hear how you guys approach it.
It's a combination, really. I mean, like, yes, there's so many wackadoodle cases out there. Sometimes, I mean, the saying goes, truth is stranger than fiction. And sometimes we'll hear these stories from, we talk to residents or nurses, and we're like, are you joking? And they're like, no. I'm just like, that's so wild. Like, if I had just written that on my own, you'd have somebody saying that, no way, that doesn't happen. No way that could ever happen. But really, it's when we hear about these cases, a lot of times we're like, oh, that would be an incredible case to put Mel on, her personality, what's her backstory, her life with her sister, her trying to live independently, her, being her and her sister being orphaned. They don't, their parents passed away, a few years ago. So what is that like? What would this patient and their story, how would it impact their lives, or vice versa? So it really does, kind of like meld itself in that way. Sometimes we are attracted to certain stories because we feel like it would be irresponsible not to talk about certain things. There are the entirety of society's woes that come into emergency departments. And like many things, it doesn't care about what your skin color is or what your religion is or what your politics is. Illness is illness. And so we really think about it from that lens of like, what are the important issues that are surfacing and how are they coming into the emergency department? And how can we really tell these compelling stories through the lens of our doctors and nurses?
Does the show have, and I don't know if you were there from the first pitch, but does the show have kind of a singular, deeper thematic that you would say, even just emotionally, that all the characters are traveling on? Or do you really like what's the centering insight or emotion of the show, do you think?
I mean, obviously, we center and focus on Dr. Robbie. He is our North
Mhm.
Star on the show. But what I think the reason why I think it's so successful is because you have an entire ensemble of people who are doing, frankly, this heroic work day in, day out that really, I think, chips away at your soul. And, it's the mental fatigue, the physical fatigue. And what we're hoping to show is that, what these people are doing is above and beyond what an average human is doing. And that maybe in these sometimes difficult and desperate times that there is an inkling of hope in humanity that's still there, and that restores our faith in community and our companionship, and that we are better united together than we are apart.
I love that. So, you had mentioned in the breaking of the room, and again, we probably have some people listening who've maybe been in one room, two rooms. So I like to ask questions for them. So when it's being decided who's going to write what, have you ever in your career been like, yeah, darn, I wanted that other episode, darn it.
um
And how do you
Sometimes,
handle that? What do you
no,
do?
I mean, grateful to be writing episodes, period. B, but sometimes, yeah, sometimes I've written stories that I was like, great, I want to do this. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, you know what? It'd be better if we left it on a little bit of a cliffhanger and the fun emotional part goes on to the next episode, which is not mine. And that has happened. Or there have been times, that's happened a couple of times. And for example, in season 2, I wrote season episode 5, where Louis, who is an unhoused frequent flyer in the emergency department, um, he starts going through a very, if a spoiler alert, uh, he has a very severe, gosh, is it okay to give a spoiler? Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm
You
hoping
can
people have
absolutely.
watched.
No, you
Okay.
can. We told them. We told people
Okay.
spoilers.
Well, Louis basically starts to die. And what originally I had pitched was that he does die, and the resuscitation happens, everything goes through, and we call his time of death at the end of episode 5. But as we were going through the story and we were like, what is the impact of that? Maybe it's better to start that code blue going off with Robbie and Langdon, trying to fight for the life of this person who, on a daily basis sometimes is annoying, but now they're still one of your own, and then have that carry over into episode 6 that Val Chu wrote, which was so beautiful. And that was told more through the lens of the nurses and the aftermath of that. So we're like, let's pass that baton from our doctors to our nurses and then see what that carries. And so, yeah, it was a little bummer. I was like, I want to have the sad, Louis part, but it's okay. I'll share that with Val. She's an incredible writer and she did a banger of a job.
And there might be in this show another chance to do that.
Oh
I'm
yes,
guessing. I'm guessing, maybe.
always,
Um,
always. There's always blood and guts and death.
um, I love how the show and how TV shows in general, because I'm a feature writer, but I still see the turns in terms of a season.
Yeah.
And I love that you wrote two of the episodes that seem to be very big kind of turns for the show in terms of episode 5 and 10. Um, when you're breaking the show, are you guys at all thinking that? Are you, because sometimes we have emerging writers who they've written a pilot and they're told to, beat out quickly in broad strokes the season.
Mhm.
Um, so do you think about it in terms of where there's turns in the season where a
Absolutely.
lot of characters are shifting? And can you explain that a little bit and give any advice?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I mean, we do 15 episodes a season. So if you break it up into thirds, you want to be able to have some momentum. You want some propulsive nature to take you through. And now in season one, we had a big mass casualty event, right? We didn't want to have to do that every season. We don't want to have to do that. But a propulsive, you know, turn can be an emotional one. It doesn't have to
Mm.
be something that, it is an external force or something, mustache twirly or something, wicked. But so for us, it was really important that we did both of those things, right? That you had, um, yes, there was lots of like, traumas and fun stuff coming in, but at the end of the day, what are people going to go away and remember? They're going to remember the emotional turns. They're going to remember the emotional stakes. Who were our characters that maybe butt heads? Was there a confrontation? Did people avoid each other and all of a sudden we're going to see both of them collide? So those kinds of things we want to build up to, and it's always ebbs and flows. But yes, I do think that we conscientiously try to do that. Obviously have something big at the beginning and have something big at the end, but how are you doing that, navigating it almost like in a 3 act structure, I guess, the way you would with the feature, right? Is breaking it up in those thirds when we do the season.
And so I want to talk about episode 10 because it's one of my favorites and you wrote it. So, um, it's so many major turning points for the characters. There's three women of color in very different parts of the medical experience.
Hmm.
Dr. Al Hashimi is performing kind of a lifetime risky procedure,
Yeah.
um, to the amazement of the men around her. And, Havadi has made a life threatening error, and it just feels, can you speak to that juxtaposition of in this episode of the different, and Dr. Mohan, I should say, is the third,
Yeah.
right, who's feeling so overwhelmed she basically has a panic attack, heart
Hmm.
attack. Can you talk about the episode and the intention of that and kind of where it came from?
So we always want to be authentic to the actual characters and the specificity of those characters. Dr. Javadi is a medical student, and things happen and it slips through the cracks. And, Dr. Al Hashimi, who we find out at the end of the season, has these kinds of little mini seizures. And she's performing something that is, when you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, if what if she had had one of those seizures in the middle of that very, very intense procedure? And Dr. Mohan, we're talking about, oftentimes we're asking people to separate church and state, your personal life from your professional life, but we're not robots. It's going to seep over into our lives. And sometimes that stress will manifest itself in, the most unexpected of times. So it was, not necessarily about focusing on that they were women or women of color, but that they were three of our, really interesting characters that at that time we wanted to see a little bit of a spike in what was happening with them. And I think that again is a really great testament to our show that we cast such a wide net of diverse characters and people to play a multitude of roles. We have, like, I think the majority of people on the show are women. The majority, we have a really, really great vast net of people from different socio-cultural and economic backgrounds who, are representative there. There's not tokenization in that regard. And I think that us being able to write to them is also reflective of what our writers room looks like, which is equally, diverse. And so I think it's really us wanting to tell the most compelling and best stories we can, regardless of who the character is.
I also felt, and maybe I'm wrong, but I also felt in the episode a mother theme in terms of Mohan's mom keeps calling her to the point of this panic attack.
Yeah.
We have a dying mother,
Yep.
and we have Havadi has to deal with her mother who's
Yeah.
coming down, and you've made this mistake. I love her mother says, there's more talented doctors upstairs. Why are you doing street medicine? I mean, it's so
Yeah.
good. It's so good. Such great writing. And then, of course, we have our head nurse who's mothering them all,
Right.
especially Dr. Robbie. Um, was that intentional? Were you thinking about that there's all of these mother strands moving through, or Did that was that intentional?
Sure, and it's very paternal, right? And then you also have the father who comes in who fell off the water slide and he's looking for his son and he's like
Right.
frantic. So I think we really think about there is your born family, there is your chosen family, what are the roles that we take, whether they are in our own personal lives, the roles that we take in our friendships, the roles we take in our work environments. And, all of that is intentional because I think that as much time as you spend with one another in a workplace, oftentimes you're spending more time there than you are with your own family members. So you are kind of constructing a different version of a family. And it could be equally dysfunctional or functional based on, who's in a member of that family. So I think that we get that. We get that, especially with like Dr. Robbie and Dr. Mohan, he sees that she's incredibly talented and incredibly gifted, but then he's incredibly kind of like a little harsh and judgmental about it. Not so different than the way, Dr. Shamsi treats her own daughter, Dr. Javadi. And so, we love like blending all of those kinds of themes and just not necessarily having to hit it too hard on the head, but really, being instrumental or very delicate about how we, carve those stories out. And then you brought up the point about this young woman who has terminal cancer and she is she's basically choosing to end her life now. Like it's time to go. It's okay. She's ready to say goodbye. And what does that mean when you are, you know, a parent of young children and there there is nothing to save you? How do you say goodbye? Is there and are there ever enough words? How do you, you know, um, leave an instruction manual to to care for those children when you won't be around. So just really wanting to, and have that then reflect, right? Like it's McKay. McKay is a young mother herself. She's seeing this woman die. And I'm sure, how is she not obviously thinking about her own child? Like, what if this was me? Javadi, she says it
Yeah.
outright. She's like, all this woman wants to do is, spend more time with her kid. And I just want to get away from my mom. And I feel like such a horrible human for even thinking that. So I think it's again very intentional, but trying to just really make sure that we portray these healthcare workers as fully realized human beings.
Which is, it's why I love the show so much. One of the reasons, because yes, they're doctors and they're having these extreme experiences, but it also feels relatable, in terms of the questions they're asking and the challenges emotionally that they're facing or psychologically. And I also love that you really, like you just mentioned, let Dr. Robbie kind of be a dick. I mean, we agree with Mohan when she says you were a dick.
Yeah.
And it's, I think it's very brave of him and of the show, because he is our kind of, like you said, North Star. And it's so sophisticated. We had Eva Anderson on, who does Margot's Got Money Troubles, and she
Yeah.
talked about the power of having a character go against their norm, with an action or a decision. And it really felt like a moment that he went against our expectation, which speaks to his arc, which speaks to letting us see all facets of him. Um, so, how did was I'm assuming your actor was up for it. I'm assuming.
Noah
I
is
would
always
guess.
Noah's an incredible player. And he's also a writer and a producer on the show and a director, so he's very involved and he really leans into the fact that, humans are fallible. We make mistakes, even the best of us, even, and because sometimes we're having a very, very bad day, like Dr. Robbie, and we're at hour 10 of a shift and he's got this mounting pressure about, am I going to stay or am I going to go on this trip? And what does that mean?
Yeah.
And, he's got a lot of other psychological things going on. Like he hasn't dealt properly with his mental health issues. He hasn't dealt with a lot of demons of his own. And when you're dealing with your own, roughness in your own life, sometimes that lashes out. And that lashes out it can lash out in your workspace. It can lash out in your personal life. It's happened to me, it's happened to everybody. So again, that specificity, it's like even the best of us sometimes have a very bad day or a very bad moment. And he tries to come back and apologize, but it's kind of, it's
He doesn't
clunky.
do it
It's not
well.
great.
He
Yeah.
apologizes and then immediately goes, "And stop feeling sorry for yourself." And you're
Yeah.
like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
he's so on edge,"
Yeah.
which I love it. And then he even gets in a fight with Dana, who's like his core person. Like, you
Yes.
guys just pushed him. And I just want to hear the emerging writers. You pushed his character. You let him do things that are unlikable. You let him, even his best center person relationship. She's calling him on it. She's
Yeah.
calling him on it.
Yeah.
Um,
And again, I think that again, that's I love that Noah wants to play in that pond. He wants to play in the messy. Perfect characters are so boring, and I love that all of our producers and our creative partners were like, "Wow, he's really going to go there." We're like, "Yes." But I think we've earned it. We've earned enough trust from the audience. We've earned enough of what we have seen him do in a
yeah.
positive light. But also let's understand that mental health is a really big crisis, not just for healthcare workers, but for everybody. And let's talk about that. Let's be real about that. And let's show the vulnerability of this man who seemingly is, the epicenter and carrying, the weight of the world on his shoulders, stumble a little bit.
And because you've earned that, and
Right.
therefore because you've earned that, he can do something unlikable. And that it's so interesting as a writer because I always get in this situation where I'm like, I understand in this moment, like in Inside Out, yes, mom is being kind of unlikable right here. She's
Yeah.
telling Riley, thanks for staying our happy girl. It's a mistake.
Yeah.
But it's why the whole movie's happening because
Yes.
moms can make mistakes too. Moms can say the
Preach.
wrong thing. There was a big discussion like, well, people won't like mom, they'll turn off of her. I'm like, "No, we will all feel like, "Oh, we've been seen.
Been
This
seen.
happens." And I just
Exactly.
your show does that so well. The other thing I love about this episode, I'm sorry, I'm just singing your praises, but it's funny. In the middle of everything we're talking about,
Yeah.
mental health crisis and blood and guts and mothers dying and it's so funny when the intern is on the helicopter pad with Dr. Robbie and he's talking about how insane the day is. And Dr. Robbie says, "Yeah, it's not for everyone." And then the intern looks at me and goes, "I'm not sure it's healthy for anyone." And then they put a severed leg
Yeah.
in his arms. It's so when you're writing something like this episode, this masterful episode, are you thinking about humor or are you
Absolutely.
just a person who that comes out of you? Or are you intentionally thinking about it?
I mean, I'm not trying to force square peg into a round hole. We're not doing a comedy. Mad props to all the comedy writers out there. I think you have to have this gallus humor. You have to have these moments of levity, and I think that that's really what is happening there. As our researchers told us, as we've talked about anything, it's a little bit how I operate. I joke. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the girl who puts fun in funeral because I have to do something else to distract myself. Maybe somebody's wardrobe, maybe somebody's, oh my God, are those plastic flowers or whatever. Because if I'm just so sad, I'm gonna crack up. I'm gonna lose my mind. So I have to have a little bit of levity. And maybe sometimes that dark humor allows us to release emotions in a different way. Because
Yeah.
if I'm not laughing right now, I'm gonna start crying. So this is, it's a little bit of armor. And I think that's why I really enjoy writing Dr. Santos's characters, Issa Briones' character so much, because she is cutting and sarcastic and she says all the stuff you wish you could say sometimes.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Okay, I have a crazy, probably ridiculous question, but I'm curious. So, in this episode, there's a wonderful scene with Santos where she is rolling her eyes, man. She
Mm,
is just, it's all on her face. So, she doesn't want to take directions from this doctor.
yeah.
Are you writing in the script? She's rolling her eyes right here, or are you just giving a general sense of her mood and letting the actor and the set let it happen on set in terms of that choreography of the eye roll? Seemed very specific to me.
We give a lot of not necessarily specific eye roll directions, but yes, about like her annoyance, right? Her irritation. She doesn't want to work with him. So really, and we tone these episodes really, we give detailed tone meetings and we work with the director and the editor and so that we're all on the same page of what it is, what we're doing. So when we go into rehearsal, we're like, okay, she doesn't want to be here. The last thing she wants to be is on a case with this guy. Everything he says is like just getting under her skin. So a little bit extra, but we need to see that. So there are times where like she may feel like, oh my God, that's so dismissive, but you know, Issa and Patrick are such incredible actors and they really live, breathe, eat these characters and understand what we're trying to do. And they also have, institutional knowledge now themselves of what these characters have been through. So they get it. They get it. Like this isn't me, this is the character and this is what's happening. And what are we building to? We're building towards her, lover calling her out, like
Yeah.
the person who you think is on your side is now going, whoa, you have crossed a line. So you want to build to that. And it has to then be able to be, seen by other people in that world. It can't just be all internal. So yeah, all intentional.
Let me ask a question for our emerging writers because they ask all the time and I want to hear your point of view on it. So they get lots of advice about descriptive language and
Hmm.
the action lines. So if you have a situation where Santos is annoyed, et cetera, as you just beautifully described, are you putting it in the action lines? Because they're being told, don't direct the actors, don't direct the director. And they get very, emerging writers get very lost about what they're allowed to put in action lines.
You know,
What's your kind of take on action lines?
Keep them brief as you can. But I also understand if it's intentional to set the tone and the mood to do that. Sometimes, I like to put them in the parenthetical, but then for the parenthetical feels like I'm really. I don't want to do that too much because then I feel like an actor is like, "What? I don't know how to do the scene. You're not relying on me to be able to do it." So I try to be more judicious about my parentheticals and put it in the scene, and sometimes put it in an action line. Like where if there's something that needs to be said. Like I feel like this is just a note, not a note just for the actor, but it's also a note for the director, for the DP, for everybody who's working in that collaborative environment to understand we're going to want a reaction. It's not just for the action, but it's for the reaction as well. So, I think that it serves, a multi-purpose in that regard. But yeah, I'll put it in the action line. Again, I don't overly do it, but I think if it's necessary and you're trying to evoke a certain tone, you have to do it.
I love that. It's a great checklist you just gave them. I want to back up a minute and go backwards a little bit because I want to talk about the choice you made to leave law to write.
Yeah.
And what was that like? Did you take classes beforehand? Were you already secretly writing? What was the day you pulled the trigger? What happened?
I know, it's wild. I had in undergrad, I had studied I was a double major in communications and poli-sci. Poli-sci was my emphasis was in pre-law, and in communications, my emphasis was in film and television. But it was film and television where you dissected film and TV. You watched a lot of film and TV. You talked about theory. One class, I my only textbook was the screenplay to Pulp Fiction. Because we were talking about filmic violence. But I didn't take any screenwriting classes, and I really, by the time I graduated, didn't think film school was a thing for me, only because I really didn't know anybody who had ever done it. I didn't have any examples in my real life world. I thought it was for honestly white men. If you wanted to be the next George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, then that's what you do. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll go to law school. That was fun. I loved learning about that stuff, but I'll do something else. I'll do a quote unquote real job. And so I went to law school and I practiced. And as I was practicing, I'd been there 3 or 4 years. And it was like, I just kept finding myself like going to the movie theater all the time. My TiVo was at maximum capacity storage for every scripted show that came out. I remember this like when Entertainment Weekly would come out and they would tell you this is the fall schedule. I mean, I was like planning what I was watching, like I was going on holiday or something. So it was really, I realized that I really still had a connection to film and TV, but I just didn't know what to do. And I had a really lovely friend who was a junior exec at CBS at the time, said, I'll help you find a job down here and just see what it's like. And so I did. I took an 85% pay cut to become an assistant. And I, fetched grilled cheese and answered phones and really learned how the sausage was made. I got to work on a TV show called Judging Amy, and my boss was the showrunner. And what happened was that every department head came through his office. Every decision that was made, had to come through him. And so it was through that where I learned, oh my God, there's an entire room of people that just sit up there and they get to play make believe and come up with the stories. And that's when I just started, diving into reading scripts and, really dissecting, screenplays. And I would watch TV and I would like push pause and I was like writing beat sheets in my own outlines, trying to figure out how to break, different shows down and really understand the structure of how a particular show worked. And it was through that I taught myself how to write. So I never took a screenwriting class. I never, did anything. Sorry. I know that might offend some people, but I used that job as kind of a paid graduate school. And that's how I learned. That's where I learned as being an assistant. And it wasn't just that job. I was an assistant for 5 years before I got staffed. So it wasn't like, oh, I just did the thing and ta-da, turned in a script. I really went through the process of learning and being on set, and what's working in in a scene, what's not working in a scene, learning from directors, from other producers, other writers, how to give feedback. I would have mini writers groups with other people who were trying to be emerging writers. So just really making sure that I cast a wide net, as really, if I'm going to try to learn how to do this, let's hard learn it from every source possible.
So great. I want to talk about the room and being a showrunner.
Mhm.
What do you think makes a great showrunner?
I think I was very fortunate to be a showrunner on Clean Slate, Norman Lear's last
Hmm.
project before he passed away. It was a half-hour comedy, and I learned from a lot of great showrunners that I'd worked with before: Jeff Rake, Garrett Lerner, Russell Friend, and Scott Gemmell is a dream. And what I really understood is that they lead by example and with compassion, and they always lead with just a sense of wanting to listen and to learn. Like they themselves, I was like, but you're like on the Mount Olympus of of screenwriting. But I think when they have curiosity and they are genuinely leaning in, and I think that's what makes you a great showrunner. I mean, honestly, I think showrunning is a business skill. It's a management skill. It's a totally different skill set than just being a great writer. And there are some people who want to do it and some people who don't. I really liked it. I think my legal brain really, adapted to that well. I was like, oh yes, management and being a mom. So put the former lawyer and the mom and put her in charge. Great stuff will get done. We'll get done
Perfect.
on time. We'll get done under budget. No problem. Everybody will go home and see their kids at night. But yeah, I think
Perfect.
I think it's about prioritization. I think it's also really learning about, like, listen, yes, it is a job, and we are employing hundreds of people and dealing with millions of dollars, but at the end of the day, we're being paid to play make believe. We're not curing cancer. It's not the end of the world. People need to have lives. People need to be able to go see their families. People need to be able to have mental health days. People need to be able to just you know um, be who they are, be themselves. And if you allow people to be their best selves in their personal lives, they will bring that into their professional environment.
So you've broken the show, the season, and the episodes are being handed out. You start writing your episode and you discover something. You discover something that ripples. What do
Yeah.
you do?
Um, Sometimes we call that a writer's problem. I like to call it a writer's opportunity. But yeah, it happens. Of course it happens. Like, I remember in season 1, I wrote the penultimate episode, and we had broken everything in the room, talked about everything, done the outline, and I went to go write it, and I was like, I'm gonna leave Scott with nothing to put in the finale. Like, what is the, and because this is where McKay had her ankle bracelet, and, we had the police coming in, and there was going to be a whole thing. And so I wrote the script and I sent it to Scott, and I said, I didn't do what we said we were going to do. I ended things earlier because I need you to have something to be able to go forward with. So I said, I ended not with us resolving McKay's ankle bracelet. I ended with her being arrested, and I didn't end some other case, but we're going to, move it forward. So, like, and that again is, I think, a way of us thinking about the show and the season as a whole, not just like, this is mine, I'm going to be greedy and take all the juicy fun bits, but like, what is in the best service of the series? And the best service of the series is sometimes saying, you know what? I love this, but it's not going to work here. I'm going to pay it forward here. Or you know what? The story is not working someplace earlier. And so sometimes you have to scrap it. I have a whole story that wrote out, and in season 2, which I'm not going to tell you what it is because it is on my wish list to come back, but
Okay.
it just wasn't working. It just wasn't working, and so I ripped out an entire storyline, and was like, okay, great, gotta go back, and either do I replace it, or am I going to beef up the other stories and make that work. And sometimes that has to happen because you're running long on time, because you're trying to time out in your head, or like with our script coordinators, how long the episode will go. And you don't want to waste everybody's time shooting scenes that are going to end up on a cutting room floor. It breaks everyone's heart. And sometimes, yes, that does happen. And sometimes you're telling a story and like it's sometimes like it's too goofy or it's too wild, or, like in execution, it didn't really hit. And you're looking at the way the, kind of the musicality of an episode
Mhm.
goes, right? Like, it's a little bit like playing jazz, and, like, there's highs and lows and the crescendo, and you're like, "Mm, on the page, it felt great. This maybe didn't it was kind of a clunker. So let's pull that out and see how we can, reframe things." That's why I have mad props for editors. I love our editors. I always say, hiring your editors is like hiring another set of writers because the final rewrite comes in post. And so
Absolutely.
God bless our amazing editors who come in to help us out, to really round out and smooth out to tell the narrative in the best light possible.
So, if you're a very experienced writer and showrunner yourself, so it makes sense to me that you could write it and change it. If it was your very first staffing job, you are
Yeah.
low man on the totem pole,
Yeah.
and you're writing your episode and starting to think, "Uh oh, I don't think this is going to work." Would you still have just written it and then told them, or would you have walked over and knocked on somebody's door?
I would have walked on somebody's door immediately when I thought that there was a problem. Probably the showrunner, a senior writer and showrunner, and brought it back like, "Hey, this is my concern. This is what's going on. I don't think this may work. Can I just bounce this off of you?" I would never, as a junior writer, just take it upon myself to not do it, because your job is to chop wood, carry water, do all the things to make the showrunner's life easier. And sometimes in those moments where you feel like, "Oh my gosh, the house is on fire," you're like, maybe it's just an ember." And other people can help figure that out. You can problem solve. That's one of the greatest things about being in a writer's room for TV. I love that collaborative environment. I think really, the cream rises to the top. You get there and you're all like churning at this thing and like trying to figure out. So for me, I don't care where the solution comes from. If somebody can hand me a solution, if you're, if you're the assistant or if you're, the script coordinator or whatever hierarchical person you are in a ladder, it doesn't matter. For me, it's like, if it's a good idea, let's take it. Let's spark with it. Let's run with it. Let's figure it out. And sometimes that happens even when you are a senior writer. You'll get a studio network note back or you get something back and it's like, we don't want this. You have to take it out. It's doesn't go with the ethos of the show or something else. And so the showrunner will come back and be like, "All right, they tossed this out." You know, I remember
Mhm.
having that one time on Royal Pains. It was my very first staff writing job. And there was a storyline that the studio network kind of held their ground on, and Michael Rausch brought it back and he said, "Listen, they don't want this. We have to find something else." And I was new and I still raised my hand. And he was like, "You don't have to raise your hand. Say what you want to say." And I was like, "This sounds kind of wild, but what if we do this story?" And he was like, "Wait, tell me more." And I pitched out a story and then people started, building on it and we ended up using it and it worked out great and people loved it. But it's about, again, those safe environments where people are like,
Right.
"Hey, it's not working and I'm not going to," and bless Michael, he'd done a million shows and was very qualified and could have probably, I'm sure, come up with it on his own, but he brought it back to the group. He's like, "Okay, great. We are all in this together. So let's try to, not try to save the Titanic on our own. We can do it
Right.
together and we can make this boat float."
And I think so many emerging writers think, well, I have to prove myself. I have to prove that I can do it. It's like, no, no, no. You've got to prove you're a team player. And like you said, chop wood, carry water. And when you're specking your own store, show ideas, how do you know when you've got an idea that has legs? Like it will generate episodes. It's not going to generate 5 episodes and then kind of.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the beauty of, well, why limited series are so successful. That that there is a beginning, middle, and end, and it can be a little shorter than it can be, say, if you want to, something that's got longevity, like a Grey's Anatomy, which I adore, and that was the very went back when I was first writing. We used to write specs of existing shows. And that's the spec script that I wrote that got me my agent and got me onto Royal Pains. So and look at that, like, what, 22, 24 seasons later, I mean, they are still cranking it out. But they Shonda Rhimes knew what she was doing. She knew what this world was. And as much as Meredith Grey, was the head of that, it was an ensemble, and the way that they were to use that, speaking about somebody else's show, not that I've ever worked on that show, but so beautifully create this ensemble environment and that hub of that hospital as the way, people would come in, transition out, and just have new blood in and infuse that. I think that speaks really well to somebody who knew the direction of what they wanted to do with that show, what they wanted to do with those people, what they wanted to see the evolution of those characters to be, and never betraying the characters always came first.
Yep. Love it. So we ask a craft question to get different viewpoints. The craft question we're asking right now is now for television, let's say in a pilot or maybe a season,
Mhm.
what makes a great climactic moment for a pilot? You know, in your third act of your pilot, so to speak, or I guess in a pilot, would be the fifth act.
Yeah.
What when you're thinking about what's going to make a great climactic moment, is there anything you guys are you're drawing from craft wise or thinking about?
Um, I always try to think about subverting expectations. What is the thing that one person that the audience might be guessing? Or second, my kids hate watching TV with me because I'm always guessing dialogue or what's going to happen in in a scene. But I think subverting expectations. And a lot of times also when you're writing a pilot, I think oftentimes as screenwriters are like, well, you know what, we're going to do this, hold it back. I'm going to lay this low key cookie crumb Easter eggs, and then I'll have this big turn in episode 3. Guess what? Maybe move it up to act 3 of your actual pilot. Just load it in there. So, yeah, I think it's about that subverting expectations. I think really for me, complex characters are my favorite thing. So look at those characters and whether they're, I mean, not just good or bad, but where do they come from? Like, why are they wired that way? Sometimes I like to call it, sometimes we see like somebody who's quote unquote like the antagonist, the bad character. Were they born that way, or did society and circumstance make them that? I always call it like the alphabet effect. It's, I love Wicked, and it was like, the Wicked Witch wasn't always wicked. Where was her origin story? What made her that way? And it allows you to infuse these people with humanity and dimensionality, and makes them just far more interesting, as far as characters that you might want to, you're like, huh, never thought I'd root for that person, but here I am feeling some empathy for them.
I love that too. That's my favorite. That's my absolute favorite as a writer. Okay, I have loved speaking with you so much, but I have to let you go back to your room. So we ask every guest the same 4 questions at the end of the episode. So I'm
Okay.
going to ask you. Okay. So the first is, what brings you the most joy when it comes to your writing?
Hitting send.
You and me both.
No, I mean, I will say, like, I find I outline. Not a lot of people, not everybody outlines, and that's their own choice. I found the outlining process very technical and daunting, but when the outline is done and I get to go write, it's bliss. I like to write to music. I like to listen to music, and I just go in my happy space. And yeah, that for me is great. And then yeah, quite honestly, great. It's good. I think
No,
it's good. I think it's great. Maybe it's not great, but I think it's good. Okay, just
but
hit
it's
send. Just
done.
hit
It may
send.
not be great, but it's done.
Yeah.
Hit send. I think it's wonderful that you listen to music because there isn't a lot of music in the show. The show is
No,
so
no.
silent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
intentionally. I
testament
love
again.
that.
Scott Gemmell and John Wells were like, we want to really lead into authenticity of what an emergency department is, and let that quiet calm and chaos that's going on, the beeps and the boops, like make that be the soundtrack of what it is. And that, that tension. And I think the studio network were very nervous about it, but they leaned in with the creative vision, and afterwards we're like, wow, that was actually a really genius call. And that's
It's
that's
so
all Scott
effective.
and John.
It's so effective. All right, what pisses you off about writing?
That people think it's easy, that
Mm.
people think it's like, oh, how lucky, like it's work, it's hard work. And I think that there is oftentimes, and when I lazy writing, sometimes where it feels like, oh, I could tell you the dialogue a mile away, and sometimes you catch yourself. And I was like, okay, if that's where we're getting down, step away, step away. Calling yourself out is a gift, and being like, this is crap. Let's go back. I understand. We always call it. I always call it the vomit draft. The first draft. Okay, you got words on pages. Now go and clean up the mess. And sometimes being able to recognize, not being precious with your own material. Or sometimes you see that in other things. You're like, oh, it was a little too precious. But I think trying to be, again, maybe that was the lawyer in me, and maybe the mom being like, oh, sometimes you got to kill your babies. It happens. It's part of the process. But again, I really lean into our writers and lean on them to really, for us to all look each other in the eye and say, yes, this is working. No, this is not working. No, that's, it feels like we're trying too hard here. And I don't take that personally. I think it is like, okay, it's sometimes we've got little tunnel vision when you're in your own little room and, typing away. And so to have someone who cares about the project as much as you do say, hey, this isn't working, but let's see how we can make it better. Not just like it's not working, but it's the very much the yes and great. I get that. Yes. And here's a solution. Here's how we can do something. Let's pitch on it. Let's try to figure it out. And I feel very, guarded in that way, in a good way. Like I have these, I'm arm in arm with these incredible writers in this room who really, we all have each other's backs to make the best show possible.
I love that you said calling yourself out, because in feature writing, it could be like you don't call yourself out and it's 7 months later and now it gets called out and you're like, "Oh, man, I knew that in the first month and I was just hoping, but oh, shit." So it's very, very, very good advice. All right, if you could have coffee with your younger self, what advice would you give?
I used to first say that maybe it was like, oh, don't go to law school. But I really think that being in law school taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about who I was. It taught me a lot about management. It actually taught me a ton about writing. It taught me a lot about, interestingly enough, a performance. I was a trial lawyer. So, you had really had to understand how to grab attention from an audience.
How did it
Oftentimes, an
teach you about
audience,
writing? How did
you
it
know,
teach you about writing?
because, when you're going into doing a trial, when you're doing an opening statement, a closing statement, anything, your window to engage with your
Mm.
12 jurors, your audience is very narrow. Their focus is about 2, 3 minutes tops. And then they're already figuring out, what are we going to cook for dinner tonight? Who's going to pick up the kids? Did I did I let the dog out this morning? Did I lock the front door? Are her shoes scuffed? Oh, she really needs to find a new cobbler. Oh, like the mind wanders as it does with us. So if I'm not giving an engaging opening statement that's getting them and getting them to, focus and pay attention, then I've lost them for good. So I have to do that not only with an opening statement, I have to do it with how I'm presenting my witnesses, how I'm doing counter, how I'm, doing cross-examination, and how I'm going to do closing. And it was all performance. And you have to be succinct, you have to be tight, you have to be engaging. And I didn't know those things were going to, feed into my now profession.
I think all the lawyers out there who are secret writers are just very happy right now. Very, very happy. All right, last question. What's your proudest career moment to date?
Proudest career moment. Mm, it's really tough. I mean, the Pitt is, head and shoulders the most lauded thing that I have been a part of, lauded project. But I also think that it's something that I have felt a ton of pride in as far as being able to tell the stories that I want to tell. Scott has really been open to, like, hey, this is a topic that's really important to us. This is really important to me. I really find that, whether it's talking about racial inequality in the emergency room, whether it's talking about like death doulas, whether it's he really lets us lean into stories that we want to tell, and he's not afraid of that. And by doing that, it gives you a part of ownership of what we're doing. And by doing that, and able to tell these authentic stories and have the agency to do that, we have a lot of pride in that. We are really truly a part of the fabric of making this show day in day out in every episode. And so yeah, I have to say the Pit has been honestly just a true gift. And I'm just very grateful to be a part of the team.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being with us today and good luck on season 3. I
Thank
can't wait.
you.
I
Thank you
can't
so
wait.
much, Meg. It was a joy to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much to Simran for joining us today. The Pitt season 1 and 2 are available to rewatch on HBO Max. High recommend. The Screenwriting Life is produced and edited by Alex Alchek. For more support, head over to the TSL workshops. We have a growing library of pre-recorded workshops covering everything from core craft like character want and outlining a feature, to the business side of writing, including how to navigate the elusive general meeting and maybe even getting repped. We also host 2 live Zooms each month where you can talk to me and Lorian about the projects you're working on. The link to sign up is in the episode description.
For more support, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to thescreenwritinglife@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and remember, you are not alone, and keep writing.